Welcome to r/Bestof Redditor Updates, where OP's boyfriend tries to force her into getting surgery on her lady parts. Our next Reddit post is from r/relationships. My boyfriend and I have been together for a year and a half. Overall, things are good. Occasionally, he's been overbearing, but he's working on it and has made great strides on improvement. We've lived together for around 6 months. So, I have a mole on the outside of my lady parts. It's about the size of a pencil eraser. It's never been a problem for me, and I don't mind it. It's hidden in even the skimpiest of bikini bottoms. It doesn't hurt, and it doesn't get in the way of anything. It isn't lumpy, and it doesn't grow any weird hair, etc. It's just a harmless little bump that's on the side of my lady parts that I've had since I was born. Even when I'm completely naked, it isn't visible unless my legs are spread, so it's the kind of thing that only me and my partners have ever seen. I've had an inkling that my boyfriend has never been a fan of this mole, but he won't admit that. Sometimes he'll absent-mindedly rub it between his fingers with his nose crinkled, like an expression that's just short of disgust. But when I asked him about it 2 different times, he insisted that his not quite disgusted facial expression was unrelated. I assumed that he didn't like it, but I knew that it was none of his business or concern, and probably didn't want to say it because he didn't want to sound rude. He asked me once if I've ever thought about removing it, to which I replied that it's always been a part of me and I wasn't interested in removal. So my birthday was a few weeks ago. I've been getting Brazilian waxes since I was a teenager. It's just my personal preference. As a birthday present, my boyfriend prepaid for almost a year's worth of waxes at the med spa that I've always gone to. It seemed like a great gift idea, useful, thoughtful, and saves me a ton of money. The med spa does a variety of other services as well as waxing, tattoo removal, laser hair removal, makeup tattoos, Botox, etc. I've had a standing appointment there every 3 weeks for years. This morning, I went to my regular appointment. My waxer, who I've known for years, gushed about how kind it was for my boyfriend to call in for my services, and we went about the wax as normal. There's an oil she uses that helps to soothe the skin after the wax, and I was waiting for that to soak in when she brought out a wand that I'm not familiar with. I asked her what that was for, and she said, "For the freezing." I assumed that she was prepping for her next client and stayed on the table. Then she began wiping the oil off and applied a cream directly over my mole. At that point, I sat up and asked her what she was doing. "Oh, this cream helps to numb the area before I freeze the mole. Then we'll cut it off, and you'll just need a stitch or 2 and a bandage, and you'll be ready to go." We fumbled through the awkward conversation that followed, and the bottom line is that my boyfriend paid for my mole to be removed as well, for about $200 without telling me. The receptionist who books the appointments assumed that I knew, and I signed a yearly waiver for all services from them, so it basically just slipped in. The receptionist said that my boyfriend asked about the process over the phone. So he was aware that this procedure involved cutting something off my body and would involve anesthetics and stitches. Guys, I'm furious and can't tell if my reaction is justified or if I'm seeing red for no real reason. This feels like such a breach of my personal boundaries, not to mention disrespectful of my bodily autonomy. I know it's small, but it's plastic surgery. There's no medical backing to having this mole removed. It would be entirely cosmetic. I obviously didn't go forward with the procedure, and now I'm struggling with whether my anger is appropriate to the situation. I haven't talked with him about this yet. It happened this morning, and I'll be seeing him this evening when I get home from work. Right now, I'm thinking of breaking up with him, but feel like that might be an overreaction, and I can't tell if my judgment is clouded. Then, one day later, OP posted an update. I got home and my boyfriend nonchalantly asked me how my appointment went. I managed to stay calm and told him how angry I was that he had tried to arrange for the mole to be removed without my consent or knowledge, especially because I found out that he was informed while booking the appointment that it would involve anesthetic and stitches. He said that he wasn't sorry because he thought that he was doing me a favor by forcing me to bite the bullet and get it done. He said the only thing that he was sorry about was signing my name on the waiver because he knows that he shouldn't have done that. Wait, what? At my appointment, my waxer had said something along the lines of, "But you signed the waiver," when I was blindsided by her prepping for the mole removal. She was confused that I wasn't aware of the mole removal plan. I had assumed that she was talking about the waiver that I had signed just a few weeks ago, that I have to sign every year for my services performed at the med spa. I was in a hurry to get out of there, so I didn't press further. I just made it clear that I did not want a mole removal, gathered my clothes, and left. As it turns out, she was not talking about the annual general waiver. When my boyfriend booked the appointment, a waiver was emailed over, which he signed as me and sent back to them. We're in a South American country where plastic surgery is extremely common. I'm the only woman in my office without breast implants. I was born in America and haven't quite subscribed to this aspect of the culture. So things are a lot more lax here than I imagine they are in the US. So not only did he schedule and pay for plastic surgery on my lady parts, but he also forged my signature on a legal document giving permission for it to be done. There is no coming back from this, and I told him so. He started crying, saying that he just wanted me to be the most beautiful that I could be. Thankfully, I was too angry to cry in front of him, and I just told him to leave. He packed some clothes, and I put the rest of his belongings in a detached garage that he has a key to. I made him leave his house keys and told him that the garage locks would be changed by the end of the week. I own the house, and I'm changing the locks on the doors this evening. I have him blocked on social media and feel very refreshed, like a weight has been lifted. I'm sure that I'll be hurting later and missing him, but this showed me a side of him that I absolutely cannot live with. I may not be as tan or as smooth or as busty as all the women around here, but I deserve better. I know that much. And now, my mole and I are going to settle down with a bottle of wine and download Tinder. Thank you again for everything. Also, down in the comments, OP clarifies that she lives in Brazil, if you're curious. I like this top comment from Fim. Looks like she got a better surgery. Bad boyfriend removal. Yeah, I'm trying to imagine how mad I would be if I went to, a doctor appointment or a dentist appointment and they were like, oh, by the way, we chopped off part of your dong. You can thank your wife for setting that up for you. I'd be like, what? Huh? So, OP, I think you made the right call here. I see. Okay, someone calls this a douchoplasty, and then someone else replies, a douchoplasty would be fixing the douchebag. OP had a douchectomy, the removal of one. Our next Reddit post comes from rSlash relationship advice. I'm a 32-year-old woman, and my husband is 35. We've been married for 7 years. He lived next door, and we just clicked. It was like a fairy tale. One thing that I've always thought made our marriage so strong was our friendship with each other and our trust with one another, although now my husband seems to think otherwise. Recently, my husband found out that his friend, Jeff, who's 34, has been baby trapped. Basically, Jeff's wife stopped taking the pill and became pregnant a few months into their relationship and only came clean after the wedding. Jeff came from a very conservative family, which his wife knew, and so he felt obligated to marry her after the pregnancy. Unfortunately, he also now feels obligated to stay regardless of the clearly messed up dynamic, because he feels that he made a vow and he'll stick by his wife and child. My husband, for some reason, has been really rattled by this. I'm currently 4 months pregnant with our first baby, and my husband asked me yesterday if I tried to baby trap him. I first laughed because, honestly, I thought that it was a joke. He was dead serious and doubled down. So I told him that we've already been married for 7 years, and a baby wasn't going to trap him any more than he already is. My husband did not like that answer and said that there was no time limit on baby trapping, and that my intentions were clearly not pure given how I was acting as if his concerns were a joke. He said that he had trusted me in the past, but me laughing in his face gave him no reason to trust me now. I don't really know what he wanted or how I was meant to respond, and I said that we should talk about it in the morning. Today, I woke up and my husband was gone, but I did have a nasty text from his 28-year-old brother saying that I forced my husband into this pregnancy, despite it being a joint decision. My husband is MIA and not responding to calls or texts, and now I'm wondering how on earth to go forward. Then, one day later, OP posted an update. I realized while I was reading the comments that everyone was right. I wasn't angry enough. My husband had insulted me and our marriage in a very hurtful way, and it just didn't really register for a while. I was so confused and upset that it didn't occur to me to be angry, but I think everything just needed to sink in. In the meantime, I called my best friend, who's been such a rock in my life. She came over with some chocolate and was furious when she heard. She called her husband to my house after I'd gotten everything out of my system. He's a family lawyer, and he said that he would happily represent me if I wanted to go through with a divorce. This man is a saint and will draw up divorce papers on Monday. My mother-in-law showed up with my husband in the car not long after my best friend's husband arrived, and she practically dragged him to the door. My mother-in-law said that he had showed up at their place late last night, saying that he was certain that I was using the baby to trap him. Fortunately, my mother-in-law is a smart woman and absolutely tore him a new one before dragging him to the house today to apologize. My worm of a husband didn't look me in the eye the entire time, but said that he was scared about becoming a dad and projected his fears onto me. He said that he wasn't sure if he was ready for that kind of commitment, but that he'll step up, as if he's some kind of hero. I roll. I called him a coward and told him that he should stay with his parents until I'm ready to talk to him. I didn't want to say anything about the divorce papers because I didn't know what his reaction would be, but he will find out soon enough. I also showed my mother-in-law the text from my brother-in-law, and her face was like a storm cloud. I don't know what'll happen there, but I'm sure it'll be bad. For now, I'm exhausted and just want to curl up and cry. My best friend said that she'll spend the night with me and that we can watch silly movies. I've also made an appointment with the therapist for next week, but for now, I just need to rest. I'm exhausted and devastated that my marriage has come crumbling down. Then, 10 days later, OP posted an update. Overall, everything has settled a little bit. The good news is that I had a scan with my doctor, my mother-in-law attended with me, and the baby is happy and healthy. I finally found out the gender. I'm having a little girl. I'm over the moon. My mother-in-law was a gem and was so touched that I'd included her in the scan. She's very excited to be a granny. On that note, my mother-in-law organized a family lunch a couple of days after the scan. I was a little reluctant, but I knew that she had good intentions and wouldn't do anything to make matters worse. When I arrived, my husband and brother-in-law were there, along with my father-in-law and mother-in-law. It was quite awkward until my mother-in-law asked if anyone had anything to say. My brother-in-law spoke first and apologized for his awful text, saying that he was swept up in the moment and wanted to support his brother. I explained how hurtful it had been to receive such a nasty and vindictive message, and that he knew as well as anyone that my husband and I had been trying for almost a year. He hung his head and mumbled something. That was pretty much the last I heard out of him for that afternoon. Next, my mother-in-law looked quite pointedly at my husband, but he actively avoided anyone's eyes. Eventually, she spoke up and announced that my husband would no longer be welcome to stay in their house. She said that she was ashamed to have her son behave the way that he has, and that she would prefer to make space for her granddaughter rather than have some lowlife hanging around. My husband had opened his mouth to say something earlier, but his eyes lit up when she said granddaughter. My husband had always wanted a girl, and he was suddenly in tears, saying that he was so pleased to hear the gender. My husband suddenly wanted to touch my belly and asked if he could come home and paint the nursery. I told him in no uncertain terms that he was not welcome and that he had destroyed any trust that I had in him. I told him that if I took him back, I would be worried that he would disappear at any kind of big news and that I couldn't have someone at my side who balked at the first chance. He asked me if I was telling him that it was over, and I point blank told him that I had engaged a lawyer. My husband was kind of frantic, but I felt so calm, like someone had put a blanket over me in this situation. Normally, I'm a big crier, but I felt so removed from everything. My husband said that wasn't fair, that he had shown a little bit of panic, and suddenly I'm throwing away our life and denying him his daughter. My father-in-law reminded him that this is the same baby that he felt trapped by no more than 2 weeks ago. My husband said that it was a mistake and he was stressed, but my mother-in-law asked him how he thought I felt. He asked him to imagine being so vulnerable and giving up your body to grow a family, and suddenly the one person you trust is accusing you of terrible things. He said that it was a mistake, and he projected his fears onto me. Throughout all of this, and all the times that he told me he wanted me and our baby, he never once apologized properly. After a very, very long discussion, the lunch wrapped up, and my mother-in-law stood by what she had said about my husband not being welcome. He asked again if he could come home with me, and I told him that it was my house, which I owned before we got married, and it was going to be a safe space for me. That is to say, he's not welcome. And as far as I know, he's staying at some hotel. Finally, he was served with divorce papers at work on Friday. I received a few missed calls and crying voicemails asking if I was really throwing away our family, but I didn't respond. He even took a crying selfie sitting in his car, which my bestie laughed at quite a bit. My mother-in-law called me when she heard and told me that I was making the right decision. She said that she never wanted my marriage to end this way or for her son to be so callous, but she said that she's here for my baby and I, and that we'll always be family. She even tried to apologize on my husband's behalf, but I told her that wasn't necessary. At the end of the day, his actions are his own. Well, it seems like OP lost a crummy husband, but gained an amazing grandma for that little girl. Our next Reddit post comes from r/relationships. Me and my girlfriend, Kelly, are both 27-year-old women, and we've been dating for 3 months. My grandfather died earlier this year, and 3 months ago, we had a socially distanced funeral and wake for him. While there, I met Kelly and really hit it off with her. Kelly's grandfather had been my grandfather's best friend, and Kelly's dad and my mom had grown up as good friends until they moved away from each other and married other people. Kelly and I had never met before, and after dating a few months ago, we decided to go public. We thought our parents would be thrilled. Wrong. My mom lost her mind at me, screaming that Kelly's dad was practically her brother and I was basically dating my cousin. She also said that dating someone I met at a funeral was super inappropriate and a disgrace to my grandfather's memory. Kelly's parents have been telling her basically the same thing. Kelly and I are both really confused. My mom and her dad moved away before either of us were born, and the whole point of the wake was to drink and celebrate my grandfather's memory. Is there some kind of taboo I'm breaking that I never heard of? I like Kelly a lot, but I'm not sure it's worth this drama. My family's never reacted like this to any other girl I've dated. Then, a week later, OP posted an update. Kelly and I discussed things, and she had gotten similar advice elsewhere on the internet. We decided, though, that we would first confront my mom and her dad with the threat of getting DNA tested first. We arranged to meet in a neutral place earlier today. The people who guessed that my mom and Kelly's dad used to be involved were right. They were high school sweethearts, but my mom went to college and her dad joined the military. My mom promised to wait for him and they'd get married when they had a better idea of his future. Except my mom met my dad during her first semester at college, sent a breakup letter to Kelly's dad, and never saw each other again until my grandfather's funeral. It's still incredibly sore between them, and they hated the idea of Kelly and I dating because it would put them into regular contact with each other. Kelly and I told them it was 30 years ago and they need to get over it, and after some wrangling, both agreed. So, no affairs, no incest, just a semi-bad breakup from 30 years ago. Kelly and I are still dating. That was r/Best of Redditor updates, and if you like this content, check out my podcast where I publish the exact same episodes. Also, hit that subscribe button because I put out new Reddit videos every single day.